It's Thursday, October 23rd, and Tropical Storm Melissa just formed out here in the Caribbean, and it's already extremely hazardous. We can see tons of convection going up around the center. This is definitely one of the stronger storms, at least in this early tropical state, that we've seen convection-wise pretty much all year. There's just so much convective activity happening around the center. Then that center gets almost more defined pretty much every scan. So definitely a lot of intensification going on right now. But one of the main reasons why Tropical Storm Melissa is so hazardous is because there's just so much uncertainty of where it is going to go. Pretty much anywhere within this white stippled region is where Melissa could track after Saturday, and we can see that we are really not expecting to see a whole lot of movement from Melissa. Currently, it is moving at a crawling 2 miles an hour, and it's a 50-mile-an-hour sustained tropical storm as it moves a little bit more into the open waters and stops interacting with parts of South America. I think that's when we're going to start to see some explosive intensification into potentially a major hurricane. And the Euro is kind of expecting the same thing. We can see that just in a couple of days, the European model, which normally isn't super bullish with storms intensifying like this, takes Melissa from a tropical storm, which it's currently at now, to even a category 4 hurricane, kind of slamming into Jamaica. Now, what this means is that this very slow movement is going to be very unfortunate for a lot of the Caribbean islands down here, parts of Haiti, Cuba, and especially Jamaica, which could even see a landfall from this storm. It's definitely not out of the picture yet, but it looks like all of these islands are almost guaranteed to see some sort of extensive rainfall and some very large waves, probably some beach erosion and some very dangerous rip currents as well. But the thing with Melissa that is most concerning for the United States right now is the sheer uncertainty of the track. In just 24 hours, that cone of uncertainty moved loads. That little white stippled region was kind of more north and over Cuba and Haiti, but now it is pretty much moved all the way out to the west. So that's a lot of movement in 24 hours. And it kind of just shows how little idea we have of where Melissa is going to track. One thing we do know for certain is that the main steering factors are going to be this very strong ridge over parts of the southeast, which is kind of the reason why Melissa is kind of trapped in the Caribbean. It's not really moving at all right now and why it's mustering up all of that strength. But this high pressure system or ridge is going to get pushed out by a low or short wave currently moving across parts of the southern U.S. Now, this short wave is going to kind of act as a vacuum for Melissa, sucking it up out of the Caribbean. And it also means a couple more things. This little area of low pressure is also kind of a region of a dip in our jet stream. And it also means it creates a shield with shear over parts of the US, which is actually a really good news because it makes the possibility of a United States landfall pretty low, actually. And this look just gives a better idea of what exactly I'm talking about as that low pressure system moves through the southeast and kind of expels that ridge out to the Atlantic. It's going to kind of act as a vacuum to Melissa. It's going to start pulling on it, and it also creates a little shield with the jet stream. And really, Melissa is going to have a very hard time breaking through this jet stream if it does destride to track a little bit more west. I really don't see it happen. So the most likely outcome is that it would just ride this up and away from the US. This also brings a lot of sheer and dry air to the region, which makes a very unfavorable development for sustaining and developing Melissa pretty much any more west of the Cuba region. But no matter really what happens with Melissa in the next couple of days, we are going to want to watch this storm for a couple of reasons. One thing is to see how strong it will really get. This is the HAFS A. This is the outlier for the strongest that Melissa is really expected to get. The HAFS A has Melissa potentially breaking some records, nearing 800 or high 800 millibars of pressure, making it a extremely strong category 5 hurricane. So that's definitely something that we're going to want to look out for as well. But moving away from the talk in the tropics, we also have a pretty decent threat of some severe weather in the United States today. It's almost kind of like a heart-shaped risk, which is a little ironic because this is for some severe weather, but it mostly covers portions of far, far western Texas, quite a big chunk of New Mexico, southern Colorado, and even through the Texas Panhandle and up into even areas including OKC. Now, this is mostly going to be a damaging wind threat, I think. We could potentially see some gusts up to 65 miles an hour, maybe even 70 miles an hour in some areas where it peaks. Our hail risk is going to be a little bit more segmented, though. One is going to cover that area from parts of the Texas Panhandle all the way up to OKC, and another one in parts of southern Colorado in central New Mexico. And then we even have a tornado risk for this. So all hazards of severe weather are going to be possible for this little corridor stretching from the Panhandle of Texas all the way up to southern Oklahoma. I think the main threat here is going to be for a couple of spin-up tornadoes when that low-level jet kicks in when the sun sets. And this is probably what radar will look like today as this event unfolds. It looks like we're really going to get our first main development of some severe weather along that main corridor that we're expecting to potentially see all hazards pretty late, actually, even into the afternoon. This is going to be because there's actually a decent bit of capping over the region, so it's definitely going to need some help to get all of those ingredients in place, and even a low-level jet to help with some forcing to get these storms going. But when that does happen, I definitely think there is going to be the chance for all hazards of severe weather. It is going to depend on if these storms can get surface-based, though, which definitely isn't a super high possibility right now, so I would definitely guarantee some strong wind gust, maybe some smaller hail with this, because it looks like it's going to be a pretty linear storm mode, and there's also a non-zero potential for tornadoes, but it's not looking super huge at the moment. Now, there are a couple more areas other than this main cluster, which is going to mostly be initiated by that big short wave kind of pushing through like everything else here. I do want to look back in that southern Colorado and then central New Mexico area where I think we could have a couple of more isolated, almost discrete storms producing potentially some big hail. I would not be surprised to see some hail in the region of 2+ inches in diameter with these, and maybe some locally pretty intense gust. These storms can create up to 70-mile-an-hour wind gust also, I think, because they'll be a little bit more isolated, and the ingredients minus tornado potential is really going to be favorable up here in that region for these couple of cells and cell clusters. And the last area we cannot forget is going to be near the actual low pressure center of our shortwave. The shear right here is going to be really favorable, so all of these little blips will have the potential to maybe get organized for a short amount of time, maybe produce severe characteristics for a little bit. However, I think the potential back here is going to be really close to zero for a lot of our severe weather, because the moisture and instability is just really not going to be there. The only thing is going to be a lot of forcing, because the low pressure center from that short wave is going to be right there, and then also the shear parameters are also going to be quite solid. So maybe a couple of strong thunderstorms right out here, which aren't also expected to last that long. These would probably initiate around a little after lunch and be done by around the early to mid afternoon, then just turn into a rain threat after that. But yeah, that's pretty much it for our severe weather today. And this is just a better look from our jet stream of what the short wave is actually going to look like. Here's that low pressure center, kind of exactly where we think it's going to be, definitely giving way to a couple of storms in Utah and Colorado. And then, of course, we have a couple of kinks in our short waves, almost prefrontal troughs that are definitely going to play a role in initiating some of our more severe, or some storms with more severe potential out in parts of Texas, far eastern New Mexico, than even near OKC. And I do want to point out that this little guy right here, this short wave, it's actually going to be that trough that we were talking about that's going to have some steering factors for Tropical Storm Melissa. Probably by this point in time, it will be Sunday when the trough looks like this. It will probably be a major Hurricane Melissa. This is actually going to be the main steering factor for if it gets shot out into the Atlantic or if it gets steered a little closer to the US than we would definitely like to see. So definitely we're going to want to watch how this trough evolves. And the last thing are a couple of weather soundings. This one is taken from our main risk area, which could potentially see all hazards. Definitely quite a bit of curvature in the lower levels of our hodograph. The only thing with that tornado threat is that our storms look to be a little bit higher based than what we'd like to see to support that. Then also we can see quite a bit of capping in the region. Definitely one of the reasons why we're not super certain of storm strength and if these storms will be able to fully break that cap, and also another reason why these storms won't really be able to initiate until later in the day. But there's definitely not going to be a shortage of shear at all in the low levels, and with our organizational shear, definitely think a couple of organized storm clusters are going to be able to get going. We also have some wind veering available to these storms as well, and our instability is actually not going to be absolutely terrible today, although it's definitely not ideal to see severe weather. So I think there could maybe be the threat of all hazards of severe weather. One thing to point out is that our lapse rates aren't super duper great either, and neither is our moisture. We'd like to see a little bit closer to high 50s to really get a more robust threat of severe weather. And also with this dry air loft pocket, if the storms can break the cap, this could help to increase the strength of those downdrafts and damaging winds. But right now it looks like that's only increasing the strength of the cap and also increasing kind of the uncertainty we have on if we'll actually have some really robust storms out here in that main corridor that could potentially see all hazards of severe weather today. But this is another sounding taken from that same corridor. We're really seeing a lot of the same stuff, except this one's taken a little bit closer to OKC, and we're going to see a couple of things: more moisture, probably some better thermodynamics, better cape, and then the only thing that's going to be worse is our shear. So overall, I think for severe weather, a little bit closer to the Red River and OKC could have a better potential for producing a more robust threat with a damaging wind threat, and then also for some hail. And then even because our storm base will be a little bit closer to the ground and our shears probably still going to be pretty favorable up here, I think the tornado threat could even be stronger in that region. And this is going to be a little bit more west in parts of New Mexico and southern Colorado, and a little bit closer to our main shortwave in the center of low pressure. And a lot of things are going to be the same and also different out here. I think our storm bases are going to be a little bit too high to support really a robust threat for tornadoes. And also, I don't really think it's going to be moist enough to also see that. Even though our elevation is a bit higher, we're going to be a little bit over 1 kilometer and sea level in this region. So you don't really need as moist of an environment to produce the same effect. Definitely think we'd want to see closer to a 50 dew point for that to happen. So I think the main thing with these storms, because we have definitely enough cape and our shear is still pretty good, I think we could see some damaging wind bursts and also maybe even a pretty robust hail threat out here if these storms could get a little bit more discreet, like it was kind of portrayed from the HRRR. Definitely think we could see some hail in excess of 2 inches in diameter. But I also do want to point out that there's not a complete zero chance of tornadoes. It just looks a little bit slimmer out here in this region, a little bit more west of that main corridor of severe weather. Then also for all of these storms, when the low level jet kicks in, especially in our main corridor, where we're having a little bit more of a linear kind of storm mode, I definitely think that's when that tornado threat will peak.